welcome to Transcendental Transformation, the place where spirituality and transformation unite. Host Miss Raina imparts truth so that you can break through your limiting beliefs and evolve into a deeper consciousness. As you go about your day, remember, before every breakthrough, there is a breakdown. And now, let's start the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Transcendental Transformation. I'm your host, Miss Raina, and today is Tuesday, November 1st, 2022. As always, we're coming live from the Sirius Star System studios right here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I hope you're doing well. So it is November 1st, and yesterday was Samhain, or for many of you might not know what Samhain is, it is Halloween. What did you guys do? Did you guys enjoy your Samhain? We had an amazing time. Me and Caleb took Nero trick-or-treating. We were like the only two adults that were that were out trick-or-treating. It was hysterical because people were looking at you kind of like, aren't you a little old? But, you know, why do we have to stop doing the things we enjoy just because we get older, you know? And that's something that as you start to evolve and as you start to get, you know, into a greater consciousness, you realize that you don't have to, you know, really let go of all these ideas, and you don't have to stop having fun. So, you know what? I didn't dress up. Caleb wore a mask. Nero dressed up. We have pictures on social media if you want to see them. Yeah, I mean, she was the toast of the town, let me tell you. She, like, everyone, like, just had this overwhelming smile and joy. Oh, my God, she's so cute. And, you know, we dressed her up as a pretty butterfly. We put butterfly wings on and this little like headband with antennas and everything, and it just, and a skirt, and everything lit up and blinked. It was really, really cute. And yeah, we just had a really good time. It was the first time I actually walked a long distance. I mean, we walked around one of my friend's neighborhoods for quite a while, and yeah, I'm a little tired today. My back is a little sore because it's been a long time, but hey, you know what? Hey, it's changing there. So I want to know what you guys did, because I want to see your pictures. I want to hear your stories. I want to know what you guys did as far as Samhain or Halloween, whatever you guys want to call it. And just send me some pictures. You know, I want to see your outfits. I want to see your costumes, and you know, just to see what you guys come up with. So anyways, guys, we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, DLive, and of course the replay links are always on our Facebook Transcendental Transformation page, and even in the events calendar page as well. So let's get into tonight's show, because we have a lot to talk about. I have so many notes, as always. You know, we go through so many notes, and half the time we don't even get through them most of the time. But you know, today's show is all about integration, observation, and implementation. And this is something for, this show is really dedicated to kind of help you understand why things are happening in your life, and why like there are certain challenges, what's going on, and why life is the way it is. Because many of us are always searching for this great big, you know, question or answer to this question: why are we here? And what's funny is that it's not. I'm losing my little thing here, you know. But it's not that, you know, it's a big answer to, you know, it's a big answer to, or a big question to answer to. It's really the fact that we have to start understanding and observing and implementing the things that are going on. So we're going to talk all about integration. We're going to talk about observation today, and we're going to talk about how to implement these things, because everything is the existence of life. And so whether you're struggling with you know, your challenges, you're playing the victim, you're always in your emotions, you can't get out of them, whatever it is, this show is going to really help you understand this idea. Because in order for us to grow, we kind of have to understand what's going on. The reason why so many of us live in fear is because, truth be told, is we don't understand life. You know, many of us falter under this the conditioning of society, where we believe in a specific religion or a specific spirituality, and we only accept these things because it makes us feel safe in our ideas, and this will give us comfort. And so we'll say, okay, well, this makes the most sense to me, so I'll attach myself to this idea, no matter how much chaos or judgment it causes me or causes me to act in. But and because I don't really spend time with myself, and I really don't try to look at and try to understand what life is about, I'm just going to believe in this religion or this spirituality or this unorganized thing or whatever it is we believe in. And this is why we attach to so many things, is because these ideas kind of give us a little bit of direction, or a little bit of safety, a little bit of a net to hold on to, and kind of makes us feel like a part of something. And in order for us to really understand what we're going through, we have to observe and implement what is coming into us, and this is what we call integration. So the first thing that I really want to talk about today is integration, because this is the idea of acting out an experience. So in all of life, we have many things that are integrating into our lives. There are things like school. There are things that families, lessons. Whether it depends on what you grow up with, what you're taught. Where you grow. As far as geographical locations, whatever the experience is, when it starts coming in, that is called integration. Because what you're doing is you're integrating new information in order for us to gain knowledge. Because this is information that has to come through. Because if we're going to live our lives, if we're going to experience our lives, and we're going to be able to grow and experience this thing that we call our life and follow this blueprint that we have, then we have to integrate certain things. So I have certain things that I have to integrate in my life in order for me to grow into who I was supposed to be, or who I am to be, and who I am now. And the same thing goes for you. So really, integration is these ideas of acting out these experiences. So I'm going to have all these different experiences. I'm going to grow up a certain way. I'm going to be a specific gender. I'm going to be attached. I'm going to be certain ideas when I'm a child, or as a child. And then as I evolve to adult, I'm going to rebel against certain things. I'm going to do certain things. I'm going to have different experiences. And all of this is integrating so that I can prepare me for who I am to become later. Because as I've told you before, that our lives our adulthood, I should say, our adulthood is nothing more than us being prepared by our childhood. So everything that we're experiencing in our adulthood, and the way we perceive life, the way we're going to go through life, what we're going to judge, what we're going to do, is all based on our childhood. And so this is why for so many people, especially that I work with so many clients and everything, is that the first thing I always do is go right back to their childhood. I'm always like, well, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about this. Because what it's doing is it's giving me this idea of integration. Okay, what purposes, what ideas, what knowledge is integrating into their life and setting them up for what actually is happening later in life, or in the quote unquote now time. And so this is a form of, okay, well, I've had this experience. I've had these ideas where maybe I didn't have a mom or a dad, or I did, or they were really loving, but I fought with my sister or brother, or maybe my parents weren't there, whatever the situation is, or maybe I was bullied all the time and I was confused with gender, whatever I dealt with racism, whatever the situation is. Those are all integrations of ideas that we're coming in through our blueprint. And so we have to act this out. And this is why, as a child, you don't really have a say-so. Even as an evolved person, you really don't have a say-so of what goes on, because you need to have things set up for later in life so that you can observe them and you can implement them later. Because remember, the whole purpose to life is to implement these ideas and to take them. But the sad thing is many of us, we don't know that this is what's going on. We take life and we deem it up because we've heard it so many times that our brains accepted it, that there's some God out there that's angry, or there's some universe out there that's waiting to zap you and punish you and get at you, and the law of karma and all these things. And you're just, everything in life is just random. Well, I'm going to tell you that this is not true. Nothing in life is random. Everything is planned out. Everything is specific to your life. And everything is specific to the parties that have to integrate and implement with each other. And this is what we call, when life lessons or fate comes in, and all of a sudden something happens. Like when you get into an accident, or when you meet somebody and you're dating them, or whatever, you marry them, then divorce, or whatever. This is all part of it, because all these things allow us this integration of knowledge and these what we call life lessons and challenges. And this allows it to occur in life. The biggest problem is we got to ask ourselves is we really don't observe ourselves, do we? Like we're not aware of what's really going on. And I know we hear we need to be observation. And I know when in the 2000s when what is that called? The Secret, when this, no, not The Secret, not The Secret. What in the bleep do we know, or what the bleep do we know? It was a movie, and it was really popular in the early 2000s, and it talked about observation on a quantum physics level, and it basically stated that the more you're aware of your surroundings, the more you can dictate and change and do what you want. And that is actually true, because in life, the more evolved you become, the more you start seeing these integrations that come in, the more you can observe them. Because the most important thing that we have to learn during these ideas is that what is it, the knowledge that we're transferring over. So if what knowledge am I gaining? And this is why we have struggled with life, is because we're not looking at life as, okay, this is coming into my life, this is integrating into my life, and I can observe this to make this what I want. What's going on is that I'm playing the victim because I've had, things happen to me in the past and my heart's been hurt, and so I'm going to put up this wall and act super tough, or I'm going to play the victim and be very emotional and be depressed and chaotic all the time. And trust me, I was there. Part of my integration in this lifetime was to go through that and have my mind wiped so that I can experience what it was like to be in the human form, so that later on I could observe myself and take that and create that implementation. And now I implement it into my life, and this is how I Am Evolution became, and this is how the radio show became and everything, because without that integration and without those experiences, I could not observe myself and say, well, if I'm really a spirit guide and I'm really in control, and I have to rediscover all this self so that I know for a fact that what my guides have told me are true, well, then I have to implement this into my life. And so this is what we're doing on a grand scale. This is a lot of times, but the sad fact is we don't really, we're not paying attention to these things that are integrating. And without integration, these ideas and lessons, we're not going to learn. So if you're constantly running into the same problem over and over, it's not the law of karma that's coming after you. It's what's happening is this integration is trying to make its way through, and it's going to say, okay, well, we need to keep integrating this until your soul, because remember, the spirit creates the soul houses the body is just a vehicle. In order for us to experience what we call life, we have this thing called the soul, but this soul is only dictated by our spirit, which is our true self, which is consciousness. And so we have to say, okay, well, until we get this, because our spirit is the observation. Our spirit, what we call our higher self, is really who we are in truth, which is spirit, consciousness. And this part of us will sit there and say, well, okay, I'm going to let my soul do this, because my soul needs to learn this in order for me to get this information so that I could have this experience. And then once I have this experience, once I finally learn this, I can observe it, because that's what the soul is doing. It's observing what's going on. And so we look at this idea of a higher self, and we have this idea of the higher self completely wrong. We talk to ourselves, like even I talk to myself, because what I'm doing is bouncing ideas off from my human soul side to my spirit, and what I'm doing is communicating with myself, because I already know that I already have the answers. All I'm doing is observing the observation that's integrating. And so we don't learn the lessons in life if we're not realizing that, hey, this is an integration. So I want you to think right now about how many times in your life you sit there and you integrate an idea, or like you're integrating these lessons, and that you victimize yourself, or sometimes you play, or you get emotional over, or you take it personally, instead of saying, okay, I see this coming into my life right now, and this is information. Because remember, how many times have I told you, and I hope now that you guys are listening to this show, you're starting to understand why emotions aren't real. Because as you're learning all these things, you're starting to say, well, now that I'm seeing this, and I'm starting to see this information integrating in me, and I'm starting to read this in observation, I'm noticing these emotions are just used as tools, because they're not really real. We're creating it with our consciousness because of the limitations. But when I sit there and I say, I don't want this integration because I'm fearful of it and I'm going to push it away, boom, we create the limitation, right? Then the limitation creates the judgment creates the emotion creates the chaos, and we're off to the races. But once we look back and say, oh, here's the integration. Here is what we're integrating into our life. And then all of a sudden we can learn the information, because otherwise there'd be no point to life, right? If we didn't learn anything, there'd be absolutely 0 point to life. Why would we be here? If you're here, you're meant to learn something. And the more you think you know everything and there all is to learn, the less you actually have. And so this is something that is a huge awakening to a lot of people. I don't know how many of my clients and students over the year came up to me and said, Miss Raina, in tears, and said, Miss Raina, I don't know what to, I thought I knew everything. And now I'm realizing I don't know anything. And now I'm seeing that these things of integration and these things are coming into my life, and I never recognized them before. And I just don't know what happened. I used to think that I had the knowledge of everything in the world. And I would just smile and say, hey, welcome to the evolution. Welcome to growth, because that is where we're headed. This is what is going on in our soul. And every single one of us is eventually going to go through this, because in order for the soul to evolve, we have to go through these experiences. And the longer you fight it, the more chaos you will ensue in, the more you will push and grind against. And it's always comes down to a choice. It is everything in life, unless you're guided directly by your life path, which most likely, if you're listening to the show and you're into this show and you're getting these concepts, you're most likely into the point where you're starting to have choice now in your evolution. You're probably beginning to be an old soul or an old soul. I know a lot of people believe that they're old souls and have these ideas that, oh, I'm an old soul. But these are all ideas that we're attaching ourselves to, because we think it's going to bring, well, if I say I'm an old soul, that means I'm wise and I do all these things. But an old soul, like an ancient soul, every time I've come here, I realize that I don't know anything, and I got to relearn it all over again. And I'm always up for the challenge. Yes, it's challenging. Yes, sometimes I want to bang my head against the wall or put my head in the oven and just, turn it on. But in the reality of things, I'm just like, you know what? How exciting is this? Because my soul is evolving again. It's experiencing something new. It's gaining knowledge, because what do I always say? Knowledge is great. Knowledge is wonderful. But you can't be wise and have wisdom if you don't turn the knowledge into wisdom. And in order for us to turn the knowledge into wisdom, we have to have an experience. So if you have a library full of information and full of all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, and you read it, but you never experience it, you will only have knowledge and never wisdom. We'll be right back after these messages from our newest sponsor, Phytotanics.
With so many fads and gimmicks in today's world, it is crucial to understand the choices we make regarding what we ingest and apply to our bodies. Phytotanics Herbothecary herbal products help make those choices simple and smart. They use only the purest sourced ingredients to produce superior quality products that your body will love. Their specialized crystal-infused blends are formulated to establish and maintain a healthy and radiant external as well as internal domain. Relish in the full line of natural organic ready-made body and skincare, and experience Phytotanics therapeutic-grade essential oils, or get creative and combine their high-quality raw ingredients to create your own blends. Phytotanics custom fusion formulas are clinically developed by a licensed esthetician to suit your individual needs. We pride ourselves on the promise that your products will be formulated and tailored just for you. Visit Phytotanics.com or call 813-402-2089 for more information. Give your body the natural, healthy look it's been craving with Phytotanics Herbothecary.
All right, everybody, we are back, and if you are just joining us, we are starting with our second half, and again, we have so much notes, and I'm only through like the page and a Yeah, but don't worry, you're getting all the information. I always do this. Poor Caleb, he writes up all these notes for me and does a great job for it. And I always go like, I just kind of went off the top of my head and kind of the same thing. But you're getting all the notes anyways. But anyways, guys, we are so you have to be able to turn this stuff in all this knowledge into wisdom. The fact of the matter is that when you're attaching yourself to an idea and you don't know what it's about, it's always going to stay knowledge, if even that, because most of us have this knowledge and we don't understand it because we're not integrating it into our life. We're not observing this information. And so we have to tie all of this into our life, because in order for us to grow and experience our creation, because remember, this is just a creation. I'm not really truly Miss Raina. This is just something that I call myself to label myself for this creation that I created. I've come here to help raise consciousness. I know you guys are coming here to help raise consciousness of this planet and evolve this planet. And the only way we could do that is start to understand that I need this experience. I need this creation to start experiencing and pulling in this knowledge and integrating it into my life so that I can observe it and then implement it. I would not be where I'm at today. And this is why I tell you guys not to take things personally. And once you see this perspective of things, you realize that everything that happens is happening for you. Because once you start to see, well, here's the integration. Okay, now I'm going to start observing how I'm acting and how, while I'm going through this, how am I reacting? What am I doing? What am I seeing? How can I adjust? What adjustments am I making, etc. And then now I'm going to take that knowledge and transfer it into wisdom, and then be able to raise that, put that information, put that wisdom into the consciousness of the planet so that the planet's vibration raises. And this is how life works out. Because it doesn't matter, like, say like the work that I do isn't acknowledged for 500, 600, 700, 1,000 years from now. It doesn't matter. The information is here now, and it will sit here until one day it's ready for the rest of the world to open up and say, hey, look at this information is here. And you know what? I may never get credit for it, and I don't care. I'm not here for the credit. Someone else may take it, just like a lot. Like, look at Nikola Tesla. Invented so many things. We would not have our modern world without him. But Thomas Edison got 90% of the credit, or like 95% of the credit, along with other people, because Nikola Tesla thought that everybody deserved this information. And of course, people being greedy, what they did was they took it, they took his ideas, stole and patented it, and then that. But the fact of the matter is his information's out here. The knowledge that he passed on is here. And no matter who got credit for it, it's here. And that's the same thing that's going on here, is we have to be able to take this in, all this integration of information and experience and observe it so that we can truly understand it and understand the creation that we are. Because think about this. You think that or a lot of people think that we're attached to these lives, right? We're so afraid of death because we think, oh, death. Well, I don't know what's going on. I don't know the other end of this. I don't know what's really going to happen. Is there a heaven? Is there a hell? Is there some universe punishing me? Am I going to get stuck in this limbo? Am I going to just constantly recycle in this matrix, whatever the belief system is? If we're an atheist, am I just going to just, black out and that's it? Excuse me, these characters that we're creating are nothing more than experiment. So we're experimenting all these ideas. So I'm going to create this idea of Miss Raina, and Miss Raina is going to, go through these experiments, or go through all these little experiments, what we call life lessons, and integrate all this knowledge and integrate all this information into this soul, into this character, and that's so that I can observe it and implement it so that I can be whatever it is. So that's why so many of us, if you're stuck on something, it's because you're stuck at the idea of integration. You're not observing yourself. You're not observing yourself as a character and saying, okay, well, this is just a character. It's not real. This body I'll shed one day and go back to my conscious self and then do it all over again. So what am I not observing? What part of the experiment that we're experiencing right now, what part of it am I not understanding? Because the blueprint is what we're guided by, and that's why we have spirit guides. Of course, we have spirit guides for many different reasons, and some we'll say angels, spirit guides. I mean, they're all everything is one. So, I mean, yes, they're individual units, just kind of like we are and everything like that. But really, we're all still one consciousness. But anyways, this blueprint, your main guide is responsible for making you follow this blueprint. That's why they're there from the time you're born to the time you go back home, is because they're responsible for the integration. They're making sure that this information is going into your experiment and this creation that you are, and living the things that need to happen. That's why sometimes you make decisions and you're like, why did I make that decision? Like, you saw the car coming and you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden right at the end you just push the gas pedal, pull out in front, and bam, and you're like, why did I just do that? Because that was part of the blueprint that had to be integrated, so that now you can observe yourself in that experience and in that experiment, so that we can grow and implement this information and turn to knowledge. And so the blueprints are here to tell us that. And that's why so many people, like, I even had a talk with one of my friends the other day, Chris, and or actually yesterday, and we were talking about all these different things, and she's like, well, when I was younger, I wanted to change the world and blah blah, and I was like, but she's like, but it's so much pressure. And I said, well, why do you want to change the world? Well, I just and it was like one of those ideas, and I said, you know what, I was like that too. When I was younger, I used to think that I wanted to change the world, and then once I understood how life is, I realized that life is exactly the way it needs to be. And people are doing exactly what they need to go through. That's why, A, I don't involve myself in a lot of things, because it's not my lessons. And two, it's like I can't change everybody, nor would I want to. And I can't help everybody, because if that means I intervene in their life lessons, then they don't learn. And this is why I always tell parents to let go of these ideas of how you want your child to be raised, like belief systems and political things and all this stuff, and just let them grow up and find out what they want. Because what's going to happen is they're going to go to their blueprint regardless. And the sad thing is that because we're so driven by our blueprints and these things, that in order for us to integrate into our lives, they have to. That's why, like, the younger souls are strictly guided. They have no free will, because the blueprint has to be followed, and then they'll pass those same ideas on to their children, so that they have to follow their blueprint. Because when we're on the other side, we sit here and say, okay, well, I'm not evolved enough to be able to understand this yet, and I need to go understand certain things, because I don't understand it. So I'm going to write this blueprint down so that I can integrate all this information, all these lessons and experiences or experiments, so that I can gain this experience, and then we'll pass it down from generation to generation and society to society, because it's all one collectiveness, understanding that it has to move and grow. That's why through each generation, if you notice, each new generation that's coming in thinks a little bit differently and cares about different stuff and doesn't care about the things that our parents used to care about. And that's because things have to evolve, things have to change, but they're still guided by these blueprints. And this is one of the hardest things to be able to do, is because in order for us to understand this, and that we have to remove ourselves. Remember that these blueprints are here to push us along. And this integration is here to make sure that we experience what it is in these blueprints that we have. So if my soul is to attain and acquire certain knowledge, then I have to have a specific experience. And if I don't have that specific experience, then what ends up happening is my soul becomes limited, and there's no way for me to get that information. It's the same reason why, like, I don't know, maybe you've never been sympathetic to something because you've never had that experience. And then the moment it happened to you, all of a sudden you're totally sympathetic to that group of people that had the same experience that you. And all of a sudden it's almost like the limitation of blinders came off. And it was just like, oh, I get it now. I understand now. This is something that now, before I could care less, but now I understand what what these people went through because I went through it. And because we went through it, now all of a sudden the consciousness of observation opens up because we observed ourselves as being sick or being ill or getting hurt or getting our heart broken or going through cancer or diabetes, whatever it is. We've now experienced this idea. And so now in the observation, it forces us to grow. Because remember, before that, we were limited in our thinking. We didn't want to understand the integration. And so the blueprint and the integration forced its way in a lot of times because it had to be able to be observed in order for us to evolve. And this is why compassion to all people and to all things has to be, or is a must. It has to be right at the forefront because all of us are going through some type of integration and observation and implementation in our own way. Just because we haven't had the experience doesn't mean we shouldn't care. And I've never been homeless, but I know how many people suffer from being homeless and how quickly this can all be taken away. And so I understand, that idea. And it doesn't matter that I wasn't homeless, but because I had integration of suffering in different ways, it allowed me to observe and said, you know what? I don't want to be this way. What I want to do is I want to grow in understanding and compassion and respect and honesty and loyalty. I want to do these things, and I don't want to be this way and just look at someone who's struggling and just say, oh, they're going to use it for drugs, because that's a limitation. That's chaos. That's closed-mindedness. That is rejecting my lessons. And so I sat there and I said, you know what? I want to help whoever I can help in whatever way I can help. That doesn't mean I have to, be Miss Raina, the spirit guide, and pass on all this knowledge. Sometimes helping somebody is maybe, swiping my Whole Foods card for the 20% off or the 10% off because they forgot it, or maybe helping someone their bag of groceries to the car, or seeing somebody on the street and buying them a meal or something like that. Whatever it is, there's so many ways that we can do that. And then what we start doing is we start creating these implementations. We start creating these other things because we're able to create this. So the whole point to this is to understand. I always say this because I want to get into observation a little bit more, but the whole point to this is think of life like if you grew up in the 80s, and I don't know if they have it here, but the 80s and the 90s had this thing called the Rubik's Cube, and it was like this cube, and it had all these colors on the side, and it was all one white, yellow, green, red, blue, and the more you twist it, the more jumbled, and the whole point to it was to get it back to the original thing. And our lives are like that. Every time you make a turn, every time something twists and goes out of shape, this is kind of like you're trying to figure out the implementation of the observation. If you think about this cube, your integration is, I have this Rubik's Cube, and my goal is to put it back all to the colors that it's supposed to be. And now it's all messed up. So what do? You observe every twist, every turn, and you turn it one way and you realize, no, that's not going to work. And then you turn it back and you flip it around. And then you start realizing, oh, wait, I almost got this way. And that's observation and then implementation, because now you're observing, hey, wait a minute, this is working. This is getting closer. I'm getting more solid colors. And you're implementing the knowledge that you're doing with the Rubik's Cube. And this is exactly what I want you to understand in life. So to take life personally is, and it's a waste of our time as a soul. It's definitely needed because we have to learn not to take things personally. But once we get to a specific time and point in our evolution, we have to realize, like, this is a waste of our time. If I to take things personally, then that means I'm not understanding. I don't care how knowledgeable we are. If we shut something down right away, or if we take something personally and we're always playing the victim, if we're always emotional, if we're never listening to others and we're always just doing whatever we want, then this idea tells us we're not integrating anything. We're just turning a blind eye to everything, and we're just walking through life and just going to keep creating chaos. We're going to be that chaotic tornado that that we've always been. And trust me, I get it. I've been there. But there's eventually a time where you really have to say, you know what, I want this to stop. Because if you're listening to this show and you have been listening to this show, or maybe you're a student or client of mine and you're listening to these shows, then you have to start making this decision and saying, hey, you know what, I really need to start implementing this. Because how can I observe things? How can I play the observer? How can I be willing to be aware of everything that I'm feeling, thinking, what's going on around me, and be able to implement or react to anything properly and to live my life if I'm not observing? Because, I mean, we would have to ask ourselves, well, what's so important about observation? Well, we've kind of been talking about, right? If we're turning a blind eyes to everything and we're not paying attention, think about how many people are just so unaware in life. Think about that. Think about the people that you run into that are just blissfully unaware. They go through, they chase money, they chase relationships, they chase all these different things, and it's like nothing exists but them and what they're focused on. And this is very toxic and chaotic, and this is something that it will take many, many lifetimes for somebody to be able to evolve from. Because if they don't make that choice to be able to go from that, then we're not observing anything. Observation is so important because that's what brings us back to self. Because the reason why we're here is, yes, to learn, yes, to experience, but the whole goal is to re-understand about self, is to remember that we are God, we are universe, we are consciousness, we are whatever you believe that this outside power is, which it's not, it's us. And that's the whole point, is to wake up and be like, wow, oh my God, I am God or goddess, whatever you feel comfortable saying, or I am the universe, I am consciousness, I am the source. And that when you realize that means you are fully observed in who you are, and you acknowledge and recognize that, and that changes. And what's so great about this is understanding that observation creates one, or actually two, important things. It helps us reflect, and it helps us gain perspective. Because think about how many times you hear something or you experience something, and because it's not something that you agree with or you don't want to hear, you instantly shut it down. And you don't reflect. You get angry. You fight with the person, or you think, oh, they're wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. They're dumb. They're idiots. You know, that's not observation. That's not integration. And that's definitely not going to lead to implementation, because you can't reflect. You can't see self unless you reflect. And the only way you're going to gain that perspective through reflection is through observation. This is something that you have to understand. So you have to use this observation as a way of becoming aware of what's going on. If you don't, it's going to be a long ride for you. It's going to be a very toxic and chaotic ride, and you will go through that many, many lifetimes. And hey, we've all done it. That's the point to life. But that doesn't mean that, you have to keep, I have several lives to do it, so I'm just going to, no. Start observing. Start being that observer now. Because in order for us to change and be able to become that creator that we're meant to be, that's what makes people powerful. When people realize that they are the power, that their observation, and they realize it, and all of a sudden they can change and do whatever it is they want, and they have the power to do whatever it is because they're the master creators. That's true observation. And the only way they got there was through reflection and perspective. If I want to have compassion for somebody, if you want to have compassion for somebody, then you have to be reflective of yourself in those moments. And yes, I get it. It's hard. And hey, even me, I don't always come out shining in that thing. But most of the time I have learned, I have learned when I have those moments where I'm like, oh, you know what? I let that anger get to me, or I let that moment get to me. I sit there and I take back and I observe myself. I say, okay, this integration of information came in, and I look and I said, well, yeah, it would have been nice if I would have did this, but I can't go on would have, should have, could have, because the truth of the matter is this is the way it happened. So where in my reflection and my perspective did I choose to either shut it down, to take it personally, to get angry, or to whatever? And this is where you start to implement that information. Okay, well, I did this, I did that, I didn't do this, I should have stopped myself, but instead, again, I took this. So how can I now start changing the way, taking control of these ideas, and be able to change that? And that's something we're going to talk about after these messages from our sponsor, Phytotanix.
With so many fads and gimmicks in today's world, it is crucial to understand the choices we make regarding what we ingest and apply to our bodies. Phytotanix Herbothecary herbal products help make those choices simple and smart. They use only the purest sourced ingredients to produce superior quality products that your body will love. Their specialized crystal-infused blends are formulated to establish and maintain a healthy and radiant external as well as internal domain. Relish in the full line of natural organic ready-made body and skincare and experience Phytotanix therapeutic-grade essential oils, or get creative and combine their high-quality raw ingredients to create your own blends. Phytotanix custom fusion formulas are clinically developed by a licensed esthetician to suit your individual needs. We pride ourselves on the promise that your products will be formulated and tailored just for you. Visit phytotanix.com or call 813-402-2089 for more information. Give your body the natural, healthy look it's been craving with Phytotanix Herbothecary.
All right, everybody. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a mix-up. Sometimes I hit buttons and then it changes to something else, and I'm like, oh, there's a new something going on, and it's not doing what it's supposed to be. But that's okay, right? We choose how we're going to react to that situation. But that's what we need to start understanding is observation. If you're taking something personally, if you can't get through something, if you're constantly running into the same dead ends or the same issues or the same challenges, the same heartbreak, the same people screwing you over, whatever it is, the same of whatever, and that then you're not observing yourself in that situation. If every time someone says something to you, or every time something happens, you throw your hands up and you say, oh, see, here it is again, my life sucks, et cetera, then you're not observing what's going on in life. You're not observing who you are in relation to those experiences. And this is something that we have to have. This is something that is a must. So I always tell people to do that. And that's the number one thing. When I work with people, I start to sit there and they start saying, well, I do this. And, and I was saying, my sister or my brother did. And I look and I say, okay, well, what did you do? And they look and, well, I didn't do anything. They start getting upset, and I said, no. Let's look at ourselves. Let's look at who we are. What did you do? How did you react? And it's like they don't like it at first because we want to view ourselves as the righteous, the one that never does anything wrong. And this is why Miss Raina no-nos is always in those chaotic moments, is because when we're not observing ourselves, we're pointing the finger, and we always think that we're the ones who are the good ones and everybody else is messed up, and it's everybody else's fault. Because we're not gathering the knowledge. We're not integrating it into our lives. We're not observing it and informing us, because we're just sitting there and saying, well, you know what? It's everybody else's fault. I'm perfect, and you're the one at fault. If the first thing that's not out of your mouth is, I take responsibility for this, and what did I do, or what didn't I understand, or what did I choose to buy into? What emotion did I try? What judgment did I try? If those aren't the first things that are out of your mouth, then what you're going to do is instantly jump into judgment, or limitation and judgment, create the emotion and create the chaos, and you're off to the races. So this is something that you have to start learning to understand. We must learn to see our own perspective in life and to gather these things and to be able to transfer this knowledge into wisdom. If we refuse to look at ourselves, if we refuse to look at any other thing and always point the finger at our siblings or the people around us and get anxiety, and then we're going to stay in that. This is why for so many times, we stay like we always think that depression, people can't get out of it. This is why pills are so popular in today's world, is because people see ourselves as the victim. They think that our challenges and these integrations, these lessons are so hard for us, and they're so, and we're taught that, oh no, you have diabetes, it's incurable. Oh, you have cancer, it's incurable. You have depression, bipolar, it's incurable. Well, of course they're going to tell you that because they want to sell you the drugs and that. But oh yeah, and when I try to get off medication, oh, it's just overwhelming. Well, there's so many ways you could do that, but your belief system of how you observe yourself says, well, I can't do it. I'm nothing. It's overwhelming, and you're constantly telling yourself. So the information that you're integrating into your soul is that you can't do it, it's too much, that you're not worth it, and you're helpless. You're the helpless victim. That's what you're telling your brain every single time. And yes, things take time, and I'm not trying to come across as unsympathetic, because as you guys know, I've been through all this. But that's why I'm saying it to you, because I've been through it. I know what it takes. I know where your mind goes when you're in these things and you feel like but I'm telling you, once you start changing that idea and you start saying, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for that. Even if it wasn't my fault, I'm going to take responsibility for what I'm doing now. Because in order for me to truly observe these integrated ideas, these integrations from my blueprints, these integrations from my from my experiences and everything, and this experiment that I'm calling life right now, in order for me to change and grow and evolve and implement new ideas into evolution, I have to be able to start taking this and stop being the victim, stop being these ideas, and start transferring these ideas. That's why, as the old saying goes, is whatever you say out of your mouth, that's what you are. I remember the old saying I used to say, what my grandma and dad used to say all the time, tell me who your friends are and I'll tell you who you are. Well, that's the same thing. Tell me what you say and I'll tell you who you are. Because what you constantly say about yourself, what you constantly say to others is truly what you believe. You could sit there and act like you're the most strongest, toughest, knowledgeable person in the world, but you can always hear the truth come out, because the whole goal to everything is truth. We have to see the truth of ourselves. That's why lies and all this stuff fall apart, because eventually it's going to be that way. It's going to have this idea where you can build lies for so long, but life says, hey, you have to speak the truth. You have to be the truth. You have to observe truth. And the way we observe truth in ourselves is everything has to fall apart. And for many of us, like I said, we take that so personally. It's the end of the world, right? It's the end of the world when something happens. When I used to do tarot readings all the time, people hated when they got the Tower card or the Death card. They'd be like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Or they'd see the Tower card, and after a few readings with people, they'd say, oh, I know what that card means. Oh my God, it's chaotic change. Well, yeah, it's chaotic change because you've chosen not to change. You've chosen to push these ideas away for so long, and you've chosen to not integrate this information so that you can't observe, so that you can't do all this stuff, and that's so you don't grow. And now your blueprint is saying, well, if you don't make the choice, then I'm going to make the choice for you. And this is something that you agree to online. Whatever you write in your blueprint, you have to follow, unless you become when you become a person of choice, that you're able to start having those choices for you. But for most of us, we have to follow this blueprint. We have to follow this integration of information. And then so our spirit can slowly sit back and observe us when we're totally blind to everything. And then just, that's why so many of us, no matter what you say to them, we just don't, they just don't get it. Or, or maybe even us, when someone says something to us and they're trying to educate us and grow, it's just like, I don't get it. But there's so much of the world that no matter what you say to them, no matter how much you try to help them, no matter what you do, they're never going to change, and they're never going to. And that's because they are guided by this thing. They have, their whole life is integration, observation, and implementation by fate, because they have to experience all these things. My dad was the same way. My dad isn't at the point with choice yet, and so he didn't take care of himself. He didn't eat right, and he didn't, he let his diabetes and all this other stuff get out of control, and eventually he passed. And no matter how many times he came up to me and said, Miss Raina, I want you to help me, etc. And when I started helping him, he just said, I don't want to hear this anymore. I want to eat what I want to eat. Go stick it up your ass. And like, like I would sit there and be like, okay, you just asked me for, and I had to, and one day I turned around, and you guys know this story. I turned around and I said, you know what, Dad, I love you to death, but I'm no longer going to help you. And he got so mad. I pay for your education. I've done this. I've done all this stuff. And you're not going to help me. And I said, no, Dad, if you really wanted help, I would help you. But every time I help you, you shut me down, and then you're telling me to go stick it. And it was to the point where I said, this isn't worth my time anymore, because it's never going to happen. I recognized that he was meant to have something happen, and there was nothing I could do to help him. So then I had to back out, because this is observation. My integration was, there's information coming in about somebody else. And through this experience, I had to learn, even though it's my dad and I love him very much and I wish he would have, that was not my duty to take on. And so sometimes with other people too, we have to understand that with other people, it's not our duty to take on their information. Sometimes the lesson is to be there for them when we can, but then also recognize when it's time to say, hey, you know, you got to do your own thing. I can't be involved in this anymore. And that, because that's true observation, because otherwise the implementation comes at the cost of, now all of a sudden their chaos is your chaos, and you're creating judgment, you're creating anger, emotions, depression, stress, all these other things, because you're trying to change someone else's fate. This is something that we have to learn to understand, to move through. And this is why that if we understand how we implement everything and how we grow, this is something that we have to do. So implementation, I know we only got 5 minutes and stuff, but implementation is the reason why things seem challenging. Because think about this, is that when you have new information, the very first time you rode a bike, most of us, I'm sure maybe there's 1 or 2 people around the world that just got on a bike and instantly took off and never fell over. But for most people, they, get on the bike, they need training wheels at first, and when they get off, they need their mom or dad to hold it, and then they fall over a few times until they learn balance. When you first learn to drive a car, etc., or do anything, when you're first time a doctor or a dentist or whatever, you're a psychologist, whatever your profession is, you just didn't get up and go to the races and off, because you had to learn information, you had to experience it, you had to observe it, and then you had to change it into wisdom, and you had to apply it. And that's why we have schools, so we can learn integration, observation, and implementation. And so when we're graduated, we've implemented enough in trial errors and fake scenarios to be able to be confident enough. And then again, even when we go out in the world, a lot of times we don't take the reins. There's people teaching us how to do stuff. We sit with someone for a while because we have to learn the real world experience. And this is something that we must grasp the understanding, because it's no different. So challenges are in life because we're denying that implementation, or the integration and the observation. We look at life and we're saying, oh, well, some challenges, are tough. And they're challenging because, we're not going to implement it, and I don't want to observe this, I don't want to feel this, etc. But again, these lessons are going to give us perspective. Imagine, I want you to think about the times you have fought with somebody. Imagine what would happen if both of you, or all three, or however big the party was, actually opened their minds and said, you know what? I'm going to try to learn and understand your perspective. Imagine, let's say politics, right? Let's use politics. I don't get involved in politics anymore. And let's say, because the 2 biggest parties on here is the red and the blue party. And and they fight all the time over each other, right? Because one side's right and one side's wrong, right? And so imagine what would happen if both sides actually said, you know what? I'm going to try to understand your point of view. I don't agree with it now, but I'm going to try to understand it, because in order for me to grow, I need to understand what it is that, I'm so against. Most of us were against it because we've been raised that way, or we've been conditioned to it, or something has happened and all of a sudden now we're against it. or forward or whatever. And so we fight over these ideas. I'm right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm wrong, whatever it is. And so imagine what would happen if we changed our perspective and we opened up and we said, okay, here's this integration of information. I'm going to integrate this into my life so I can observe myself, because in the past I wasn't open-minded. I shut things down just because they were on the opposite side of the party or because they believed something completely different. So I didn't want to listen to them because, you know what, because it's not worth my time. So imagine what would happen, if we open that side up. It would change things. And this is why if we fight it, if we reject it, if we refuse to recognize it, etc., all of a sudden it's going to create chaos, because we need to implement this stuff in our lives. Implementation gives us power. It makes the reason why so many people attach themselves to this idea of a God in heaven or religion or spirituality or karma or whatever, or being the all-knowing person in football or whatever it is. The reason why we attach ourselves to these ideas is because it makes us safe, because we don't have the information, because we're not recognizing the knowledge and turning it into wisdom. Safety, true safety and understanding for yourself and everybody else comes from when you're able to recognize all this information, recognize that this is just a character, and saying, you know what, I'm integrating all this information from my blueprint and through my experiences, because I'm experimenting in this thing called life, and now I'm going to observe myself and be the observer of how I react to things, what I haven't, etc. And then now I'm going to implement all this knowledge and change it into wisdom so that I can create a more conscious planet. And that's really what it's about, people. We're here to raise and understand the consciousness in self, and once we start to get that, things are going to change. But of course, again, that life here on earth is never going to be perfect, because this is our playground and this is why we come here. All right, everybody, that is our show for tonight. I hope you really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. This show may be a lot for some people, but this is something that I want you to go through over and over and really get this information into you, and really start observing yourself and how to integrate that stuff. But as always, people, follow us on our Facebook at facebook.com/transcendental transformation. Our YouTube is the same. Visit my website, soulandspiritguide.com, and sign up for our newsletter to receive special VIP hidden shows and special access to the website, as well as special guest offers when we have. If you want to email me at transcendentaltransformation at gmail.com. If you've really enjoyed tonight's show, we'd really appreciate it if you shared it along with somebody that might enjoy it. The only way we're going to grow and help others is by your help as well. And always remember to believe in yourself, and it's not our abilities or our talents that make us who we are, but it is our choices. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.